Tulane has no clue who Ole Miss is going to be starting at quarterback, which is honestly why Lane Kiffin did it.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we bring in Gary Smith, the beat writer from the Times-Picayune, to talk about the Tulane Green Wave. We talk about the expectations for Ole Miss at quarterback, what Tulane is doing for that. We'll also talk about Jake Retzlaff and some players to watch, and of course, give our paths to victory and predictions. So stick around for that as well. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you can get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download that app today. Remember, we're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. All right, let's go into Thunderdome. Gary Smith, Times-Picayune. Let's go. Gary Smith from the Times-Picayune. So nice to come inside Thunderdome and talk about the Tulane Green Waves. You know, Gary, there's not a Tulane site on the Locked On network, so it's interesting. I mean, we have to see what happens because they've won 35 games over the last couple of years, and so they're going really well. But they have no idea who Ole Miss is going to line up at quarterback. They have absolutely no clue. And I think that is absolutely hilarious because I think it's going to be Trinidad Chambers, but I can't prove that it's Trinidad Chambers, and I cover this every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And John Sumrall was talking about Tulane the other day. He was saying it's a little different because those two quarterbacks are different in what they do. Tulane, John Sumrall keeps talking up Brendan Sullivan, who really was the Iowa transfer, probably going to start the opener if he hadn't been hurt a couple of weeks before the season. But they run the exact same offense when he's in there and when Jake Retzlaff's in there. Ole Miss, it's a little different with those two guys. So that when you're not 100% sure who you're going to be facing in a week, you have to prepare for two guys, and that takes some prep time during the week in practice.
Yeah, and like I said, I assume it's going to be Trinidad Chambers, but I could not on my life say it's going to be Trinidad Chambers.
Yeah.
And coaches are much more paranoid than I would be. So I can't imagine what the analyst at Tulane, I don't know how big the analyst staff is at Tulane, but I'm sure they're pretty evenly split up trying to say, hey, here's the defensive game plan for Austin Simmons. Here's the defensive game plan for Trinidad Chambers.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the way it worked. John Sumrall talked the other day. Yeah, it was kind of funny because I'm guessing that Ole Miss fans like Chambliss better at this point. I don't know that for a fact, but
they don't. They're excited about Chambliss.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. But Sumrall talked about how they don't think Chambliss. I mean, one, he's not as tall. They're worried about him as a runner. Not as good of a natural passer, and that was what John Sumrall's take was on it. That if Chambliss is in there, that the passing game probably isn't going to be quite as sophisticated as it would be otherwise. The funny thing is, I was driving up to Mobile for the Tulane South Alabama game, listening to the Ole Miss radio broadcast, and it was a struggle for Simmons early in that game. The two interceptions, and then Lane Kiffin showed what type of a gutsy coach he is by dialing up a long bomb on fourth down from his own territory with a quarterback who'd already thrown two interceptions, and that helped turn that Kentucky game around. But because I was actually and not knowing him that well, I was actually surprised to hear Sumrall talk about what a really pure passer he was, because the broadcast early in that Kentucky game, that wasn't what was coming out of the airwaves at that point.
No, he is a 1-1 NFL draft level talent.
Yeah.
I mean, the ball looks different when he throws. He had a touchdown pass against Arkansas.
Yeah.
He couldn't put any weight on his left foot because they re-injured it the play before. And he threw a touchdown pass just straight flick of a wrist.
Okay.
and to get it to go. It's pretty interesting. He's a good player. He's a really good player. And he rehabbed last week like 20 hours per day to try and get ready for that game. And it just didn't work out. There was a weird call where he re-aggravated the injury. So I'm sure he's working out and rehabbing 20 hours a day this week as well. But it's always fun when you're playing a G5 school or a G6 school and you're like playing injury games. And I enjoy that.
That's Lane Kiffin. That John Sumrall understand. I mean, I actually think John Sumrall said the other day that he's kind of modeled his program after what Lane Kiffin's done in the transfer portal. Obviously, different budgets at Tulane and Ole Miss for the portal, but he watches the way Lane Kiffin can restock and keep the team identity going. And John Sumrall has done a terrific job with that at Tulane. Tulane has 60 newcomers on the roster this year, but they seem to be playing like a typical John Sumrall football team. And he pointed out it's huge for him that this is all he's ever known. He didn't become a head coach until 2022. So he didn't have to make the adjustments that some of the other old school coaches have had to make on the new environment.
And real quick, I'm just going to get off subject a little bit, but the 4 teams, if the SEC decided to re-expand, if the North Carolina and Clemson rumors are true and they're adding 2 more, the other 2 teams there needs to be Georgia Tech and Tulane, right?
It would make sense. That's certainly, if you'd have told me this 5 years ago, it would have seemed absurd where Tulane was as a football program, but Willie Fritz did an incredible job turning it around, and John Sumrall's taken it to a different level. His recruiting is extraordinary. I mean, the fact that he was able to get Mario Williams from USC to come last year to the program said how the level's gone up. A guy like Mario Williams would have not even considered Tulane, even with Willie Fritz as coach, and the administrative commitment, everything behind Tulane, just the commitment to Tulane would have been dead in the water 15 years ago if this NIL stuff had come along, because Tulane would have not wanted to do it, and Tulane is all in. So they're, as long as they keep winning, they're in the best position they've been in ages to make that type of a conference upgrade if it happens.
Yeah, it must be nice for like Tulane to be a wanted program, because every conference they're talking about in expansion, they're like, oh, well, Tulane, because you got the new stadium. I guess getting Human Stadium was one of the smartest moves that they made, honestly. And the money that's associated with that university, I mean, it's not going to have huge attendance, but we're not at the point where attendance in the stadium necessarily matters anymore.
Right. That's not as big a deal. And it was, there were a lot of fans who thought this stadium was going to be too small. It's a perfect fit for Tulane. And we saw that against Duke on Saturday when they packed the place and had a sellout. And it was Duke had 2 false start penalties on a kick, on a field goal kick twice in a row, because the student section was making so much noise. It's a great environment when Tulane's playing well. I covered the team when they were in the Superdome, when there were 10, it was like a morgue over there. It just wasn't a good fit. So I do think it was somewhat controversial with fans when they did it, but you're right. This whole idea of having to have a big stadium and attendance, that's not nearly as big a factor as it used to be.
Yeah. Whenever I hear somebody talking about some kind of attendance or mentioning a stadium expansion, I immediately discount whatever comes after that.
Yeah, that's smart strategy there.
Yeah. All right. So when we come back, we will talk to Gary Smith of the Times-Picayune down in New Orleans about players to watch for Tulane and what we can expect from the Green Wave on Saturday. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it all down. For Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambers delivered in a big way. He was a weapon on the goal line as a runner and a passer en route to 3 total touchdowns against the Arkansas Razorbacks. When the pressure was on, Trinidad came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance was not a fluke. We mean he was on the platform for the D2 Harlan Hill Trophy. Trinidad wants to go on a streak, if you know what I mean. And just like Trinidad Chambers delivered for the Ole Miss Rebels, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period is through November 18th. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, their new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, the place to place your first $5 bet. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast, however you're listening, and whatever audio podcatcher you are on, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but keeps all of this free. If you want more, join the Insiders program on the subtext link down below. No trolls, 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. Give it a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. Let's go back to Gary Smith from the Times-Picayune talking Tulane Green Wave. All right, we're back with Gary Smith, beat writer for the Tulane Green Wave from the New Orleans Times-Picayune. Does the Times-Picayune still have a print edition, Gary?
We still do, and it actually matters. We'll see how long that lasts, but right now, no. I mean, we still have. I mean, I had a dead. It's funny. I covered University of Florida for 17 years. I had a friend of mine who covers them was in town to cover the LSU game. The deadline for his paper, the Orlando Sentinel, is 3 p.m. for the daily newspaper because they don't care about the daily newspaper anymore. I had an 11:45 p.m. deadline for the Duke game. The paper still matters for now, and it's kind of refreshing. It's I mean, the news is not good for newspapers, obviously, with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the latest to announce that they're discarding the print edition. But right now, that my paper still really cares about the print edition.
Yeah, that's good to hear because, man, it's crazy. Me growing up, I can remember in the morning rushing to get a newspaper and read the box scores and whatever thing that they were doing. Kids today, they don't have that because everything is just instantaneous. And honestly, it might have been better back then. It's not quick news, instant news, but it was better with the anticipation and what was going on.
I hate it now when I'm at an airport covering a game on the road, because that used to be one of my big things on my way back on the red-eye flight Sunday after a game, is getting the local newspaper and seeing what they wrote. Now it's hard to find a newspaper in an airport anymore. That's just the reality of it. And then you go on the site, and for obvious reasons, it's hard to get it because you have to pay for it. Because newspapers are in the business, you got to make money. So yeah, I really miss those days, but they're not coming back.
No, they definitely are not. I tell people all the time that are complaining about the modern state of journalism over and over again. And it was like, hey, you're trying to do best practices for a telegraph machine when the television has been invented. I mean, it's not changing at all. No. Anyway, the players to watch, obviously Jake Retzlaff. We'll get to him in just a second. But who else does Tulane have that Ole Miss needs to pay attention to?
Shaz Preston, he was a huge recruit out of Louisiana when he went to Alabama, did nothing in 2 years at Alabama, didn't catch a pass, came back to Tulane last year, didn't really have, his confidence was shot from his experience at Alabama. And then he really messed up his hamstring before the season started last year. So he didn't do a whole lot last year. He came on a little bit at the end of the year. He was the best receiver on the team in the spring and through fall practice. Then he didn't do anything in Tulane's first 2 games, but he started to break out against Duke. He had a 60-yard reception, a 30-yard reception. He's an explosive, big, fast talent at receiver. I think he's their difference maker. It's going to be in the passing game, and he's still frustrated because he has not scored. Tulane's wide receivers have not caught a touchdown pass yet through 3 games. Their tight ends have 2. Their receivers don't have any. Shaz Preston, he almost did it last week. he's going to love the atmosphere. When he was at Alabama, he wanted to play in an atmosphere like there's going to be at Ole Miss. He couldn't really get on the field. He is jacked up for this game, and he wants to put on a show. So I'd start with him on offense. Then their running backs, they've got a deep running back room. I'm not Maurice Gordon, a Louisville transfer, had a really good opener against Northwestern. Then he tweaked his ankle. He was kind of been a game time decision the last 2 weeks. They decided not to use him. He's been practicing this week. I think he's going to play. Zuberi Mobley, a transfer from Florida Atlantic, has been a revelation. He's been pretty solid. And then they've got a freshman, Javen Gordon. They rotate these guys in and out. They've got another guy, Arnold Barnes, who started who played a lot in the opener too, who's the only returning running back on the team. It's going to be running back by committee. But they do have an effective ground game. But Shaz Preston would be the guy that I think would be the one that Ole Miss would be the most worried about in terms of the skill position players.
Yeah, and the main player on the offensive side of the ball is Jake Retzlaff. He has two 100-yard gains, 6 rushing touchdowns, had 4 touchdowns against the Duke Blue Devils. Now, I watched that game between Tulane and Duke. Is there a chance that Duke just isn't good?
They've got some – well, first of all, they're not as good as Ole Miss. Let's start with that. There's no doubt about that. But they have dudes on their defensive line. They've got a talented defensive line. Tulane had a really good game plan for Duke in that game. And the final score was very misleading, 34-27. Tulane was up 24-3 with 2 minutes left in the first half. And Javian White, their nickelback, who leads the nation, by the way, in interceptions with 3, stepped in front of a pass, caught it, hit the ground. And as he hit the ground, the ball came out, and it wasn't an interception. If he'd have held on to that ball, I think we would have seen
Illinois. A blowout.
They beat Duke 44. Duke lost to Illinois 44-19. I think it would have been the same. Duke ended up scoring right before the half, got a fumble from Retzlaff, scored again in the second half, kind of made it falsely close. Then Tulane was back up 18 points, and then Duke scored 11 points in the last 3 minutes to make it a 7-point game. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. Duke has some really good defensive linemen, but we don't know how good a team they are. They've played 2 good teams this year and come up empty in both of them. There's no question. Everybody at Tulane knows this is a step up, and Tulane has not played a 4-quarter game yet this year. They've dominated for large sections of all 3 games, but they've not come close to playing 4 quarters. And their only road game, it's not just that they didn't dominate South Alabama. And they could have lost that game. I mean, they were up comfortably. They got down 14-0, outscored them 33-3. Then South Alabama is sitting there trying a 2-point conversion in the last minute that could have sent it to overtime. That's a little bit of a concern that Tulane, they did not look the same in their 1 road game this year as they did in their 2 home games.
Yeah, and the one thing that you notice from Tulane, and John Sumrall is a defensive guy, that is his pedigree, but they don't seem as stout as the team that Ole Miss played against in 2023 against the run.
Yeah.
They're a little bit leaky.
I think you're right in terms of the stats. I think that's a little misleading in that I think it's been really commitment and effort on every play and being disciplined, because these coaches, they love their defensive line. And what Tulane has is an SEC depth on the defensive line. They play 10, 11 guys up front. And they can rotate them in and out, and all of them are capable of being effective. But you are right. There have been some times in these games where they've given up some rushing yards, and other times where they've been more effective. I think they feel like they've underachieved a little bit on the defensive line, and that they're actually going to be better than they have looked in the first 3 games, because they really. All the coaches were talking about going into the season that they thought this was the Sumrall, this was the best defensive line he had in his 4 years as a head coach, his first 2 at Troy and last year at Tulane.
Yeah. We went through the Ole Miss fall camp, and they were talking about how great the front 7 was, and we all saw what Talon Green and then Arkansas against the front 7. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. We are a little bit concerned at Ole Miss because of Retzlaff and what he can do on running the ball. But after seeing Talon Green, he's a good player, but it's kind of unfortunate that he follows Talon Green because the athletic ability isn't quite at the same level.
Yeah, it's really been very surprising how effective he's been as a runner. In fact, I just wrote a story that's going to go online at the Times-Picayune within the next hour They knew he was a good runner, but he opened a lot of eyes against in the opener against Northwestern when he ran a quarterback draw and just outran everybody for a 69-yard touchdown. And he was showing speed. And in his third of 4 touchdowns against Duke, he cut inside and then he just completely froze a cornerback with a cut outside. And then he outran a couple of safeties to the corner of the end zone. Their starting center was telling me today that he thought when Jake Retzlaff arrived, he was their 3rd best running quarterback. He just didn't see it in him, but he's got those instincts. The 4 rushing touchdowns he had is a school record for a quarterback. And there were touchdowns that a lot of quarterbacks don't make. And he's the 3rd leading rusher in the nation for a quarterback, but the Arkansas guy's number 1. And you're right, that will, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of both off the read option and him just scrambling. You're going to see him running a lot, and Ole Miss will certainly. That's going to probably be their number 1 worry going into this game to try to slow that down. And I don't think any of us saw that coming when Retzlaff transferred to Tulane. His numbers were decent running at BYU, but nothing like he showed in his first 3 games at Tulane. Tulane's all-time record for quarterback running for a season is 601 yards, set by Steve Foley in 1973. Retzlaff's almost to 300 yards, and he's got at least 9 games left in the regular season.
Yeah, and let's say that Retzlaff is going to make that pretty
comfortable. Yeah, I think safe. I think that's pretty sure.
All right. We have one more segment left to go. When we come back, we will talk about paths to victories for both teams and give our predictions for the game. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Mazda crafts cars for those who do simply more than move. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, welcome back. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, all of that stuff on the website. We would appreciate it very much. And give the Times-Picayune and Gary Smith a read as well. I'm sure he would appreciate it, and they have some good stuff down there. They're actually taking the news seriously like they used to do. That needs to be rewarded. So give them a subscribe as well if you feel like doing that. Gary, what do you think the path to victory for the Tulane Green Wave is in this game?
No mistakes, and so far Tulane's had 2 turnovers, both Jake Retzlaff fumbles, and I don't think he's actually that prone to fumbling. They just happened in those 2 games. Playing all 4 quarters and being able to run the ball both with Retzlaff and with their running backs against Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is going to score. Tulane has a good defense. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's team score on everybody. That's just the reality of the situation. And so Tulane's going to have to outscore Ole Miss in this game. And I think one key is having an experienced quarterback like Retzlaff, who played at BYU. He played in the Big 12. He went 11-2 last year. A lot of times I feel like Tulane went and played Oklahoma last year, early in the year. And Darian Mintz, even though he ended up having a great year, you could tell the whole team was kind of intimidated by the environment and was really shaky at the beginning of the game. I think with Retzlaff starting, you're not going to see as much of that against Ole Miss. And of course, that I'll never forget that Tulane Ole Miss game in 2021 when Tulane had a lot of negatives going on that we didn't quite understand in terms of having evacuated Memphis for a hurricane. But I remember thinking Tulane actually had a chance in that game. And then after 2 plays, I realized that Tulane, the whole team looked like deer in the headlights, and it was going to be an absolute blowout. That won't happen this time. This is a much more confident team with a quarterback who's been there and done that before. But the key is going to be, not making mistakes. Tulane's won the special teams battle in all 3 games convincingly so far. Good punter, good kicker, good coverage, stuff like that. They're going to have to do all the little things well to give themselves a chance to win this game at the end.
Yeah, and Ole Miss's path to victory. If Ole Miss plays this A game and Tulane plays this A game, Ole Miss is going to win the game. That's the reason they're a 12-point favorite or something like that, according to FanDuel. I think that Ole Miss needs to play a clean game. No turnovers, no penalties, no short fields giving to the Tulane Green Wave, because that allows them to get closer to where you are and they can actually upset you. Tulane can win the game. Tulane can beat Ole Miss. But Ole Miss, if they play well, Tulane will not be able to beat Ole Miss. So I think the important thing is play a clean game first and foremost and make Tulane drive the field. If they have to go 75 yards every time they touch the ball, they're not going to be very successful against that defense over the course of the game.
Yeah.
The second thing is make Jack Retzlaff beat you with his arm. Make him throw the ball to beat you. Do not let him beat you with his leg. Make him hand the ball off on his own read to a running back. If a running back beats you, so be it. Do not let Jake Retzlaff beat you. If you do those two things, I think you probably win this game by about 17 points, honestly. So what do you think your prediction is for this game? What do you think Tulane's going to do in this game?
I'm going a lot closer than you, but I do agree with you. I mean, Ole Miss is the better team. They're in the SEC. They have a bigger recruiting budget. Lane Kiffin's an excellent coach. This is a team that should have made the playoffs last year. Just could have done some damage in the playoffs last year if they just hadn't blown it in some close games. It's going to be a tough atmosphere for Tulane there. But I really do like Jake Retzlaff's poise. I think Ole Miss is they're still finding themselves a little bit in terms of their players. I mean, they lost. I mean, Jackson Dart. They lost some key guys from last year. They've got a little uncertainty at quarterback, like you mentioned. The key again, if Tulane limits the errors, doesn't have the lapses, because if they have lapses against Ole Miss, your 17 points is probably going to be an accurate prediction there. I think. I have a feeling that Tulane's not going to do that this week. And my prediction, I'm going Ole Miss 31, Tulane 27.
Okay, you're going with a little bit of a higher scoring game.
Yeah.
I think I am going to go. I haven't done my prediction this week, so I'm trying to think. I like the 17-point line. I think that Ole Miss is going to jump on with the script. I think Trinidad Chambers is going to eventually be the quarterback, and Ole Miss is going to use some exotic personnel groupings and exotic things like that can kind of get them off to a quick start, and Ole Miss is going to win by 17. I'm going to go with 34-17, and we will see exactly how that looks. Gary, what do you got going on this weekend? Are you traveling to Oxford?
I am. I hate those 2:30 games. Make it tough for me to decide when to go. I ultimately decided to get up early Saturday morning and make the drive. But I will be at Vaught Hemingway Stadium for that game.
What is early for you?
Well, I mean, not at 7. Leaving at 7:30. I mean, it's a 5.5 hour drive. You got to account for traffic once you get to Oxford. I don't need to. I'm not one of these people who feels like he needs to be there 2.5 hours early for the game. So I'll probably my goal is going to be 7. Leave at 7. Might end up being more like 7:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Safe travels heading up to Oxford. Follow Gary's coverage on the Times-Picayune print edition or the online edition whenever he gets done. Gary, thank you very much for joining us today, man.
Thanks for having me on. I always love being on the podcast.
All right. Thank you so much, and be safe heading to Oxford.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. If you don't believe me, Google Ole Miss podcast and see how much we come up. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it is completely free. Your support means the world to us. And in another big moment for Locked On, college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Howdy toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.